Hi guys, how are you? So nice to connect to you. So welcome to this video. My name is Laura. Welcome to Shamanic Healer. And yeah, welcome to this show or whatever you want to call it. I hope you guys had some great holidays or time off if you were doing something. And today we're actually going to call, I don't know what we're going to call this video yet, but we're actually going to talk about the Christmas program because that's literally what it is. But we might have a few more elaborate videos on the program that's going on right now too. And then we're talking about the Saturn program, which you find in Santa. Obviously, Santa equals what? If you just reverse a few words, it equals Satan, right? And then we'll also talk about a few other things. I'm not really sure. So it might be a shorter video than usual, but I think it'll still have some interesting information for you. It's just because I kind of want to get it out now. And then the next video, I want to do a live stream. So I don't want to wait like another week or so for all of this. I just want to get out the information now and then chat with you as well before the year is over, or at least 2021, because the real year actually isn't really over until March. Like I already said in a different video, like the real, wow, my throat is like blocking up. The real new year, they don't want you to know this information, is more around like March, right? And all of it probably goes hand in hand with them also erasing our time, like erasing maybe 1,000 years of our time or whatever. Okay, so the Christmas program, what did I find on that? You know, I don't know how it is for you guys, but for people who actually celebrate Christmas, and I know not everyone, you know, is Christian or celebrates, but because it's so predominant and because it's in almost every single country at this point, right? It's not just something that you find in the US or in Europe or whatever, you actually find that almost everywhere, like every continent. I do think a lot of people are probably under the influence of this program, let's put it that way. And so I was just kind of asking, I have like my little smart book here and everything, because, you know, personally for me, it's interesting. What I notice is like Christmas can be either a really great time or it can be a really bad time, like just filled with arguments, with frictions, with a lot of tears maybe, or it can kind of just be like meh, right? So it goes like a lot of different directions, but it always seems that, especially if you are involved with a family, let's put it that way. So if you think back to the time when you were a child, and this goes according to if you actually did celebrate Christmas, you know, with your family and everything. And if you're of a different religion, you know, maybe you celebrate a different holiday that's similar to Christmas. For Jewish people, that would be Hanukkah, maybe. For Muslim people is I forget what it is, Kwanzaa or whatever. But, you know, just think about a time around the same time where it could be a similar feeling where people just get presents for whatever reason and everything. Now, Christmas in and of itself, there's Christ in it, right? And it's also typically here in the US, it's on December 25th. Now, in Germany, where I grew up, and this is another interesting fact for people who don't know this, Christmas goes almost 3 full days. So it's from the 24th, Christmas Eve, like a lot of places shut down already at noon or maybe a bit later. It depends on where you are in Germany, to be honest with you. If you're in a more Catholic area like Bavaria, they might shut down way earlier than when you're in Berlin or whatever. And it could have changed over the past 10 years too. It's just something, you know, when I grew up in Germany, that's how it was. They shut down until December 27th because December 24th is Christmas Eve. Children in Germany actually open up their presents on Christmas Eve. Here in the US, mostly it's Christmas morning. Had a lot of arguments or a lot of fights when I was still with people around that time. They always wanted to give me a present or whatever on Christmas morning, and that, or me personally, I was always upset about it because I was like, I want my presents on Christmas Eve because that's what I'm used to from a very early age on, right? But at the end of the day, you know, the way I view it now is literally, I don't care when you give me a present. You know, a present is literally a gift. It's an honor to receive a gift, unless it's like a vicious gift or whatever that someone's giving to me in spite of something. So December 25th is the first day of Christmas, and December 26th is the second day of Christmas. Now, also for Easter in Germany, maybe also in Italy, I'm not really sure, like in all these other countries, we have 2 days of Easter. So we have the first Easter Sunday, that's the first day. And then Easter Monday is the second day of Easter, and everything's actually closed during that time. So it's an official holiday in pretty much every part of Germany. So with Christmas, though, back to the thing of, growing up, being a child and everything, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate. I remember a lot of not so great Christmases, to be honest with you. And I have to say, in hindsight, the best Christmases that I have had were actually not necessarily when I even was with my family, meaning my biological family, like parents and siblings and everything. As bad as it may sound, right? But what I remember is Christmas actually was never really a super happy time in our household. The pressure is always immense. It was always an argument about the tree, whether or not we would have an artificial tree or a real tree, and blah, blah, blah. And someone would always be upset, that we had this or that, and all of those things. There was always so much pressure with the Christmas Eve dinner and the Christmas day, and then having to see all the relatives on the second day of Christmas. It just seemed, when I look back right now as an adult, and I think this is also why sometimes Christmas gives me a bit of an bad aftertaste or whatever. It was mostly all about pressure, people getting upset during Christmas when I grew up. And as bad as it may sound, again, I almost always hated the presents that I got. Now I might sound like a spoiled brat or whatever. I don't really care. But it does, when you're a child and you get a present that you really hate, right? It kind of does give you like a really bad aftertaste in your mouth. I want to say that too. It's kind of like, do they not know me really? Like, I'm their child, blah, blah, blah. Do people not know me better? And so usually the presents that you would receive from your friends would be way better. And that happened around when you were a teenager or older, obviously. But it seems that a lot of people were experiencing that, at least my friends too. They would get like a whole bunch of weird presents or nonsense presents. And in hindsight, sometimes I think I even said to my parents once, I actually would have preferred you not giving me any present, or just maybe giving me the money or cash for a present, because now there's this present that I'm never really going to touch, and it's just a waste of money and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know. I mean, it's just such a mundane thing, but it can really trigger a lot of childhood wounds and a lot of stuff coming up during Christmas, And so that's just my personal experience of Christmas, where, me and also other people that I know would actually get really upset about a lot of different things. People would want Christmas to be, I don't know, like in my family, it was all about singing on Christmas Eve, actually. And I think that's also why I personally have such a strong rejection against singing, because when you're forced to sing from an early age on, and you don't want to sing at all, especially like in front of other people, but you're kind of forced to by your family, let's put it that way, I think it almost puts like a trauma on you, or like a blockage on you. And so all of that together was kind of like Christmas for me. Some people could have had a great Christmas, like your parents could have like given you great experiences and momentums or whatever. But I feel for a lot of people, that's really not the case. Now, as you grow older, you're kind of more in a position to shape how you want it to be. So the way that turned to me is the moment I was out of the house, which was as a student and everything, I decided I'm actually not going to go home for Christmas Eve anymore because of all that trauma that kind of played out when I was younger. I'm going to wait until the first or second day of Christmas and kind of see my parents at the very end of it. I might sound like a shitty daughter in that sense, but they actually have a few more children that they can actually have around on Christmas Eve and also on Christmas morning. So I'm not the only person in their household who, they can annoy with all those things. But it really did put like a kind of like a bad aftertaste in my mouth, all of that. So I would usually just spend those days with other people, like either with partners that I was with then, or I would spend it with I had like roommates back then, back when I was still like in Germany. I had like this one Muslim roommate actually, and she was super nice. She was actually from Tunisia, but no one really celebrated Christmas with her because everyone always went back home for the holidays. And so I remember one day on Christmas Eve, we actually celebrated it together, even though she was Muslim and blah, blah, blah. And I think that was a great experience for her. And it was actually a good experience for me too. So I kind of just started creating my own memories in regards to Christmas. And now that I'm so far away, like even before 2020, even before the travel restrictions, I've actually not been home a single time for Christmas. Usually it's just the excuse of, actually I've been home once, and that was in 2018, right after Australia, but just because I was home already. But usually it's always that the prices are way too high, like extraordinarily high around that time, where I really almost can't justify going back home for Christmas, before 2020, obviously. And so it was always like for me a good time just to kind of spend it with, friends or on my own anyhow here for the past 10 or 12 years. I don't even know anymore. But I did go home once, and it turned out to be an okay experience. It wasn't like super bad. It was fine, but to be honest with you, I just kind of feel sometimes people that I talk to have like this huge attachment to it and everything. And I'm like, I really don't have that attachment to that specific holiday, because I've kind of made peace with it, that it really, when you work through all your wounds and you work through all the, I don't want to say trauma that you've experienced, but in a sense, like through all the negativity, it's almost like, okay, well, I actually don't really care that much about it anymore, all of those things. But I was just wondering about, why is it such a frictional time for a lot of people? Because I have some stories pulled up here from articles where, people are killing their parents on Christmas and everything. So I want to read a few excerpts from that as well. But it is a very frictional time, right? So what I got is, it's actually a programming done onto us from childhood on, which that is super interesting to me, because I have a few videos out there that in particular talk about how they really try to sever that heart-to-heart connection between the caregiver and the child from an early age on. Probably your mother, if your mother was the one who you grew up around with, or your father, if you're closer to your father, whatever. But it's usually the mother. I have to say that. The mother is your most karmic partner you can ever have. It's actually not a relationship, but it is the person who kind of, gave birth to you and raised you. And if you are a mother or a father to someone, you are going to be their most karmic partner as well. I just want to point that out too. So it goes both ways, right? So it's this program, and of course they're going to put this program on us, obviously. And it could be a great program if everyone had like a happy and dandy time during Christmas. But from what my understanding and talking to so many people over the past few decades and everything, a lot of people don't have that super happy experience. Like, even if they are maybe in a, love relationship or married to someone for the past 20, 30 years, even if they have children and everything, it just always seems like there's something, even if it's not their partner, it's like, oh, and I don't want to see my mother-in-law. I don't want to see my, this and that grand aunt's parent, whatever. It can go different right now for other people too. Maybe people who lost someone right now, they're kind of regretting that they didn't spend more Christmases with their parents or whatever. But you kind of just gotta, make peace with that too, because you don't need a special holiday to spend time with people, to be honest with you. It's the same with the Thanksgiving program too, I think. And, in hindsight, I think all of these are programs that they're kind of imprinting onto us, because Christmas was always a huge thing. Even in the medieval ages, if you go back to like all probably the written scriptures that are around for the kings that were around, and let's just say the 14th century, 15th century and on, it was always a huge event, right? So the year traditionally might have not ended on the 31st, because a lot of people back then celebrated the new year in March. And I don't know when they switched around that time exactly, but Christmas for some reason was always a huge deal, even back then in the medieval ages. So if you just imagine they put this Christmas program onto us from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, we're like so imprinted, in our DNA, in our brain, even at that point. Because first of all, it's all around us, right? Like, it's all around the Christmas doodles, the commercialism in regards to that and everything. But it's been going on for hundreds, if not even thousands of years, supposedly, I think only for the past 1,000 years or so, or maybe 2,000 years. But I mean, it's several lifetimes that we've had with the Christmas spirit in it, always on the same day. So it's a program that they put on to us. We are conditioned program. It's all about the childhood wounds, by the way, which is why I also think from an early age on, I really had to work through a lot of these through events like that, to really clear myself from it. And, when I look at people nowadays, and people get really upset about Christmas and maybe not being able to spend it with blah, 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 or blah, 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 I'm just like, those are childhood wounds that you need to basically clear, to be honest with you, as bad as it sounds, because they're trying to keep us in those two. They're trying to keep us in the most predominant childhood wound, by the way, is that victim mentality. Because as children, we don't have as much control over our life as we do as adults, because of the age. We don't have a car, we don't know how to drive, we don't have a job, we don't have money, we can't create our reality to the same degree that we can as an adult. It's just a fact, right? I mean, we can always create at no matter point of life we're in, but from a legal standpoint, not really. We can't sign a contract, have our own like house or whatever. So the most predominant childhood wound is what? The victim mentality. And I see the victim mentality very clear in a lot of people, especially here, especially right now, what's going on with, oh, we don't have the power, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, we actually have way more power than they want to give us. And then when I see people who get like all upset about, oh, I can't spend Christmas with this and that family member because they're excluding me because of the, injection status or whatever. And I'm like, okay, first of all, why does that really bother you though? Like your worth is not dependent upon other people, seeking approval. Like you need to seek approval within yourself, and everything. It is upsetting when that happens, but like, I'm not really sure these people even saw their relatives on a regular basis. I kind of feel they're just kind of seeking a victim mentality and being like, oh, this is something I can get upset about right now, especially for Christmas. And blah, 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 and I'm just like, no, you have to get over that. Like you're in a victim mentality because you don't want to take control of your own life. So you're just looking at all these reasons, but you're not seeing the bigger picture that maybe you could just create your own, Christmas celebration on your own with like a group of whatever like-minded people and everything. So whenever I always see that reasoning, yeah, there is a lot of truth to it. A lot of people are being excluded right now for different belief systems and everything. And if that is happening to you, I am sorry about it. I personally am not really experiencing that in my own family, but we're separated in other ways. We're separated, through time and space. We're not even really on the same continent right now. And then also with others, I'm not really sure I really want to see them. Let's put it that way, especially like the further related ones, not like the closer related ones. But, for me personally, there's a lot of victim mentality that I see in people going around who are kind of, in that mindset and who feel excluded because of that. Because you can always create something, on your own where you feel you are in integrity, right? So it all has to do with childhood wounds. And a lot of these people, by the way, I do feel they've experienced some trauma in their childhood. They will always try to get us through the childhood trauma. As a child, you are the most vulnerable, and that's when everything's being shaped around you, your entire belief system, everything. It's true, you can always change that at any point in your life, but most likely you're able to change that better when you're a child than when you're like 50, 60, 70 years old. It's just a fact, obviously, but some people can change it like continuously throughout their life. So they keep us in those childhood wounds, oh no, I can't be alone for Christmas. How dare they exclude me because of the various different opinions. So then, you're kind of like thrown maybe with people even you don't want to be with, especially if you are like with an aunt or uncle that you really don't like, even as a child. We always pick up on that. We always know, especially as a child, that person doesn't really like me or is jealous of me because blah, blah, blah. It all has to do with karma, obviously. Like family is always karma. Family is always karmic relationships. It's different from friends in that sense. They can also be karmic relationships, but not to the same degree family is. So it's always like, especially during the Christmas season or holiday season in general, Thanksgiving maybe too, but especially during Christmas, you're always thrown together with all these weird relatives that you don't really want to see, and where there's going to be tension no matter what, right? So there's also a lot of Christmas spirits floating around during Christmas. A good time not to drink would actually be on Christmas, to be honest with you guys, because of the spirits, which is basically the spirits that you can consume through your alcohol too. And then the real entities around you are being activated on 100,000th degree or whatever. There are a lot of rituals. If you're going to church, which I want to share some church pictures with you, because I actually did make the effort and I wanted to dig through all the rituals that they're doing at church. Every time they have the three. So what I personally experienced, and I don't know if they have the booklet with me, but especially with the Silent Night. We actually sang the Silent Night song. We sang it 3 times in 3 different languages. The 3, that's why 3 works when you want to manifest something. Think in terms of saying it 3 times, or just 3, 3, 3, not 3, 3, 3, but basically like 3, right? So you don't just say it once, but try to do it at least 3 times, because it actually does work. It actually does manifest something into your reality. Now, I remember us singing the Silent Night song 3 different times in 3 different languages, but still, these are rituals that they're doing at church. I'm not sure if I have any Christians watching at this point. I hope I don't. But if I do, I might do another Christian review video in the new year, because I think it's really important to dig through all their rituals. In songs, they always have something with 3, re-emphasizing it 3 times somehow. This is specifically at church. So there's a lot of programming that's going on with Christmas anyways. The programming is all around us in the songs that people are singing. It's all around us in the commercialism. Oh, you have to buy the biggest present, and if you don't, your child might think you don't love them enough, or blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of pressure, like both on the children, on the parents, on like families in general, right? But it's basically just another programming from them. I might read on that again, like in the future, just a little bit more, because there is this very significant date of December 25th. And I didn't even realize this, like, supposedly there's more than one sun god. I just found that out recently. One sun god is born on December 25th. And I want to talk about that sun god specifically in a few other videos. And I think it all has to do with the fact, how some people are under the influence of the angels and archangels, and also Michael Jackson, which, yes, it all belongs together. Okay, Michael Jackson, angels, archangels, all the same demonic entities or artificial intelligence, everything. I have videos on that, by the way. And if you're a fan of Michael Jackson, I'm going to assume you're under the influence of, so whoever's under the influence of the angels, angel card readings, calling upon the archangels, calling upon the angels, is also under the influence of this one god. I always thought for some reason it was a sun god, and the only sun god that I knew was Ra, R-A, not R-A-W, not raw vegan food like some vegans might think. So I don't know who we're going to make fun of in the future, but I'm going to write like a new age video, and the new age deceptions, the Christian, and also the vegan agenda. All of that for me it's almost all together. It's all these 3 different cults that people are a part of and that we really need to dissect through. So I think there's going to be a lot of fun stuff coming up in the new year. But the sun god Ra, R-A, is not that. I think it's a different sun god. I think I know which one too. I kind of always felt maybe it was connected to Jupiter, Zeus. I'm not sure they are. But whoever the sun god is, which I guess there's a million of them, I don't know. I'm not really into this god agenda, but that specific sun god is actually also born on December 25th. So obviously they're hijacking all these dates and, putting Jesus' birthday on there. I don't think he was born on December 25th. I have like 2 different dates in mind. One is more around the March period. And then scientifically, it would make more sense around the summertime too, because there were a few scriptures mentioning, the certain types of trees that were around, which are only in bloom in the summer period where they were. But I don't think it was December 25th. I think that's connected to the sun god, who is supposedly born on December 25th or came into existence then. And so whoever's really under the Christmas program, which, by the way, I don't think it really ever was. For me, it was always like, what's the big fuzz about it? It's just like another strange day where, we're off as children in school and everything. But other than that, so whoever's under the Christmas program or feels it extremely is also under the program of the angels, the archangels, and Michael Jackson. I know it sounds wild, but let's keep in mind, Michael Jackson is just, reincarnating and recycled in different bodies. So he's obviously someone else like 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago. And so it's a program. It's literally a program they're putting onto us and everything. Now, I want to share some stories just to give an idea that I'm not the only one who has that opinion on Christmas too. So there are quite a few incidents that happened on Christmas. Okay. And I can't really, I could probably share this screen with you, but it doesn't really make sense. So there's this one story about officers responded to a home in Missouri at about 11 p.m. Friday. That is Christmas Eve. And I do think, especially this year, everything feels very dense and heavy, specifically over these past 2 years already. I don't remember it being this extreme in 2019, 2018. So I think they're definitely ramping up their rituals and energies. And yes, they are using us for that somehow too. Especially the people who really aren't aware of it. Let's put it that way. So I really felt Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, those were the two ritual days somehow for them, for the elite, for whatever. So Christmas Eve, 11 p.m., they found 32-year-old Brittany Wilson at the doorway with a sword in the front yard. She had blood on her clothes. The police department wrote in a statement, officers found her boyfriend, 34-year-old Harrison Stephen Foster, in a bedroom with stab wounds. Okay, hold on. Lost my screen here. She said she stabbed him to set him free of the entities. So this is actually very valid, to be honest with you. He probably had a lot of entities in his body. And she could probably pick up on that somehow. I think they also took drugs, actually. As far as the story goes, they took some sort of psychedelic, or not a psychedelic, but something really extreme. I don't think it was meth, but it could have maybe been something different than that. So when you take meth and those kind of things, you're going to attract a whole bunch of entities. Not psychedelics in general, but like heroin, just the drugs in general. You're going to attract a whole bunch of weird entities. I think maybe also, if you want to cover this in a different video, let me know. It's just very extensive. So she said he had the entities in his field and everything. She allegedly called the police after stabbing him 3 times. So she's basically with a sword, right? Which is wild. I don't know how many people actually have a sword, but that kind of reminded me of the medieval ages and how probably the program ran through her body for a few lifetimes already. Officers arrested and charged her with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. Her bond was a 2 million cash. All right, so something no one really has in that position. Other violent crimes happened on that same on that same weekend, I guess. So in New York, police said a 29-year-old man shot his parents on Christmas morning in their home. He fled their Long Island home after shooting a 64-year-old mother in the head and a 65-year-old father in the back. Both victims were in stable condition, so at least they survived, right? Because it seems like the first one didn't really survive here. In Detroit, a woman and her 13-year-old daughter were found dead by relatives who showed up for Christmas dinner. When the other family members arrived, they looked through the window because she wasn't answering the door. They could see an image of what appeared to be a body laying on the floor. And then again in Missouri, I don't know what it is with Missouri. You maybe have a lot of dense energy over there because certain states are like that, right? A 2-year-old boy died after a gun he was handling accidentally discharged on Christmas Eve. The entire gun thing, you don't know if this is also just like a fabricated story, though. I mean, if he really did die, yes, that's sad. But a lot of these gun things are fabricated stories. Like all the school shootings are mostly fabricated stories to kind of, get rid of the guns with people. They slowly but surely want to get rid of the gun laws. Sorry, they want to bring in more gun laws so that people are not going to be able to have guns anymore the same way they don't have it in Europe. And then they can't defend themselves in situations like this, right? So you've been having that, since Sandy Hook. You've probably been having that since Columbine, maybe even way before that. I'm not really on top with all like the shootings that supposedly happened at schools. A lot of them are, I don't want to say fake news, but they're all, with crisis actors and everything. So I'm not sure if this in particular is one of those or if really an accident happened. In that case, it probably has to do with karma between these two people. I know it sounds ridiculous to people who aren't tapped in like that, but deaths don't just happen for no reason, right? In Maryland, a professional boxer was shot in front of his children. Seemed like a road rage incident on Christmas Eve. So from what I'm gathering from all of this, it really wasn't a peaceful time for a lot of people, especially the ones that kind of attack their own family members, right? And I feel it's a lot of entities that are floating around right now in the air, you know, especially when people are already like in a strange mood. I feel it could amplify it even more. And I've seen that, you know, firsthand for sure also. So it doesn't help when people actually drink in that scenario, because it brings out all these other entities that are going to kind of just enter your body, because you're probably going to leave your body at one point when you're just drunk. And then you have to get rid of all the spirits that kind of enter your body during that. I mean, alcohol is just one of the worst family destroyers, or, you know, friendship destroyers, period. But yeah, so it's a lot of stuff. And in addition to that, I think they're also doing a whole bunch of rituals. Now, let's actually get to a few things that I did want to share with you. All right, so let's go right here. Why is Santa Satan? Share the screen. Right, this is like super interesting. Okay, and this is actually not anything from me, by the way. This is actually something someone else posted. But when you look at these paintings or cartoon-like figures of Santa, I mean, when I saw this, I was like, actually makes sense. You know, Santa actually never really gave me a great feeling, especially as, you know, some of these people who are embodying Santa, I feel a lot of them actually could be PEDOs, to be honest with you. And not just with Santa, also with all of these other figures, maybe even the ones that play figures in like Disney World or Disneyland. You know, I feel like a lot of these actually have an unnatural attraction to children, let's put it that way. And I kind of felt as a child, you know, whenever we kind of came close to some of these people, like intuitively, that some of them really aren't like coming from the highest of integrity. So I personally was never really drawn to take a whole bunch of Santa pictures. And, you know, it's really, but this is like an extreme example, you know. And so what the person wrote in regards to that, let me just pull that up here. So I'm sorry for not wishing anyone Merry Christmas. I do not disrespect you or anything, but I don't personally celebrate Tammuz, Bacchus, which is a god. I think he's the wine god, or Nimrod equals Satan. And then they go on saying it has zero to do with Yahshua's or Jeshua's birth, which is basically Jesus. My people are perishing because the lack of knowledge. I do agree partially with this person. You know, for some people, Christmas is like extremely important though. So I wouldn't necessarily, you know, just overgeneralize like this. So the difference between Yule, Saturnalia, and Christmas, you know, December 21st is the longest night of winter, also known as the winter solstice. It was first officially noted in scientific documents by Hipparchus, an ancient astronomer and mathematician. So winter solstice is celebrated worldwide in many different ways. And then Yule, from Old English, Geol, so Jule, or cognate Julie, Anglo-Saxon for midwinter, Scandinavian for return of the sun. This is the time that animals are slaughtered. So this is, I guess, Christmas to them. They cannot be kept through the winter, so meat is readily available to all. A large feast is held, and a Yuletide log is burned for 12 days. That could also be the 12 days of Christmas. So 12 is the number of sacrifice, though. It would be decorated with runes as protection. Many sacred plants are brought inside and placed above doors, including yew, mistletoe, and holly. Pagans would call upon different deities by placing small statues amongst the evergreen boughs. Mistletoe was thought to have a power of resurrection, containing goddess Frigga's tears inside the berries. And then Saturnalia, a Roman holiday which began in 217 BC. Dies Natalis Solis Invicti, birthday of the unconquerable sun. From December 17th to the 23rd, a commemoration to Saturn, the Roman god of agriculture. There were public feasts in the Roman Forum where the slaves were honored. There were many festivals such as Juvenalia for the children and Mithra. Yeah, so Mithra is one of the sun gods, the unconquerable sun infant god for the elites, and the practice of gift giving and Saturnalian. So Christmas, on the other hand, 25th of December is the date set by Pope Julius as the birth of Jesus Christ. Christmas literally means Christ's Mass. In Greek, celebrates both birth and baptism. On December 25th, AD 336, the first recorded celebration of Christmas on December 25th took place in Rome, some 300 years after his death in the Jewish calendar. And the story of the nativity stems from 4,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia in the Middle East. Ancient Mesopotamia is also the Fertile Crescent. Each year their gods, maybe he's also a guard though, Marduk, would battle the monsters of chaos, and the Mesopotamians held a 12-day-long festival called Zagmuk. They held ceremonies with that reenacting the birth of the king each year. Okay, so then the Norse has to do with the imagery of Santa flying with reindeer, stems from the god Odin, who had a wild animal hunt every solstice night. And then reporting on the moral behaviors of children and everything. It also has to do with the 4th century Bishop Nicholas. He's sainted. He was known for generosity. Yeah, so there's just a lot that goes into it, obviously. There's also something with China and everything, but we're going to move on to the next few pictures. So yeah, because when I was at church, I was at St. Patrick's Church here in New York, which is like, I think one of the largest churches. It's definitely a Catholic church. I can tell you that much because everything was very Catholic themed. And we were at midnight mass. Like that was the first time that I did midnight mass ever on Christmas Eve. I think, obviously not religious or anything, but I think it's just something to do and experience in a lifetime, maybe. So, one thing for sure, other than the face muzzles and everything, and they're not checking for any injection papers as of now, by the way, but the AI is just everywhere, all these screens everywhere. Oh, you have to see this person who's giving the speech, blah, blah, blah. Like I already noticed that back in April. They're bombarding American churches with so much AI. I don't think it's like, the last time I was in Europe, I don't think it was that way. It's a bit more traditional in Europe. You don't have screens floating around like this. I also think it's quite hideous in a church that's so beautiful, but whatever. So you have the AI, and then this picture right here. So, just look at what he's wearing. I'm not sure who he is, some priest or whatever, some higher figure of the Catholic Church. When I saw his wardrobe here, the first thought that came to mind was, him being a PEDO, maybe. I do feel a lot of these Catholic people, like nuns, nuns are not nice. Most nuns, I don't know about most, but I heard a lot of story of people growing up with nuns and they were really not nice to children at all. Usually it's like an all woman school or all girls school, them being like one of the most cruel out there, basically, like really abusive, maybe verbally, but maybe also like, giving like a lot of physical abuses too, like hitting them or whatever, disciplining them, whatever you call that. And that was usually more in Europe, though. I don't know how it is in America. I would assume it could be similar, though. So what you do have with all the scandals in the Catholic Church in Germany that came out like 10 years ago, and it keeps coming out over and over again, is that a lot of these did abuse, church boys and everything, and did something to them sexually. We don't have to go into detail with everything, but yeah, basically just imagine you have a child and you bring them to these Catholic whatevers and you trust your priest or whatever, and then you actually end up with a really traumatized child down the road because they've just been molesting them or doing whatever to them. So that's kind of, I don't know if this person in particular is that. I wasn't really in their energy, let's put it that way. But when I see these huge head things, the first thought I had was it reminds me of the Illuminati. So there's probably something with that. But it's also, I feel so sorry for the kids whose parents drag their children to church like that, or like really maybe people who even went to Catholic school and everything here or elsewhere, or may have experienced that, and I do think there are way more stories out there and we're not hearing a lot of them because it's such a stigma that's attached to it, and it's like a no, you don't talk bad about a Catholic priest or just like a Christian priest in general. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention. And now I actually wanted to go to the last picture here. So they also have in St. Patrick's Church, they have this huge thing, which it looks quite beautiful. And it's interesting that it's red, and it's actually the Galero. So from the year 1245, Pope Innocent, what a name, Pope Innocent. If someone already is called Innocent, why would they be called Innocent, right? Pope Innocent the Fourth at the First Council of Lyon. So Lyon is in France. Everything's in France, right? Now, if they have maybe erased 1,000 years of our history, that could have been like the year 300 or 245, just to give you an idea of how that works. Pope Innocent wanted his favorites to be distinct and recognizable in the lengthy processions of the council. When a cardinal died, it was tradition that this Galero be, I want to say Galero, but it's Galero, be suspended over his tomb, where it remained until it is reduced to dust, symbolizing how all earthly glory is passing. So it's limited to individual cardinals as a crown, symbolizing the title Prince of the Church, meaning they have to be kind of crowned, right? To be a prince of the church somehow. So who's crowning them, and what kind of ritual are they crowning them? And what do they do? What kind of satanic things do they do, right? So with Santa, it's Satan reversed, and Satan comes from Saturn in a way. And that's where this entire thing comes from. All right, you guys, I'm going to leave it at that for today. It was a bit longer than I wanted it to be, but let me know what you think. Thanks so much for everything you do. Talk to you very soon. And until then, have a wonderful one. Hope you had great holidays and everything. Bye.